Welcome to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Thursday, February 8th, and joining me is always my partner, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. By the way, he's a PhD economist. Dr. O, the jobs report came out last week, and much to everyone's surprise, including the White House's surprise, the economy added, and I'm making air quotes around this, 353,000 jobs. I look at that and, at the time, and I look at it largely the same way. I'm not feeling like that's a genuine number. And, my concerns would be, the sum of the parts, I guess. That number includes, striking auto workers who were temporarily off and then brought back on. And then there was another piece of data that was in there, and that was, the wage increase at 0.06%, where average hourly earnings, growing like that. Of course, January is a new start to a new year. A lot of increases are sort of like, not to say baked in, but they're somewhat baked in. Could you please help me, for sanity's sake, make sense of this jobs report?
Yeah. So let's start with the numbers, right? So we get a strong jobs report in January. We get some revisions too. Like if you look at revisions for November and December, they're up a total of 126,000 jobs. And so on the year, we've added about 3.1 million jobs in January in 2023 altogether.
Okay.
Or roughly 255,000 jobs per month. Job gains, pretty solid, pretty solid year. So every year, the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they just revise, they make these revisions. And we see this, it's very common. There's, adjustment of seasonal factors in January, that bump up the numbers, a little bit. But, this wasn't a big surprise. I saw people just reacting like it was crazy, the end of the world. No, it's a good thing, man. We have jobs being created in this country. I think that's the thing that was missing from the reporting on this. Jobs, lots of jobs. And that's fantastic. That's a great thing. Now, the thing is that the report kind of looks hot on the surface, but if you dig a little deeper, you realize that part of the increase, like annual wage growth ticked up from 4.3% to 4.5%, right? That the increase is, related to what you kind of pointed out a little bit, which is, you have, right? First, at the start of the year, a lot of people get pay raises. Then you have, it's a one-time thing, right? So remember, we get this almost every single year, right? January, you get a pay bump that shows up in the number. At the same time, if you look at total hours worked actually fell in January, which to me signals weakness under the surface. Total hours worked fell. And so if you have, if the total number of hours is falling, right? Average hours worked per person, right? Average hours worked is going to increase. So that to me is a signal of softness that's hidden inside the jobs report. You probably have people working, multiple jobs too. I mean, that's also a possibility. Fewer hours, you're trying to make up for fewer hours by working multiple jobs, right? And that to me is a sign of weakness. So you have it, and you look at the trend, and you basically have a cooling labor market, that started cooling since the end of 2021, early 2022, and has been cooling since, right? Labor bargaining power has shifted from workers to employers. You can see that in the quits as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at the quit rate, fewer people are quitting. The great resignation, as they called it, has ended.
Well, there's no
staying put.
There's no doubt about that. And the quiet quitting, that's long gone too.
That's right. That's right. And so all of that stuff, to me, points to a labor market that is still cooling, that is rebalancing. The gap between demand and supply is still shrinking. And so that should kind of like alleviate all the worries. I think a lot of people see this good news as bad news, sadly, because they think, look, with the risk of a strong labor market and higher wage growth, comes the fact that it may be difficult to bring inflation down to the Fed's 2% target, and it may be difficult to keep it there. But I think that's that's something that we'll have to watch. We'll have to watch carefully. Next week we get the Consumer Price Index report for January. That's going to be exciting. There might be revisions there too. And so we'll see how we start off the year. But all in all, I think our listeners need to know the labor market's still pretty strong. The U.S. economy is on solid ground. The risk of recession is very low. And that's great. How we've managed to bring inflation down, right? And keep layoffs low. That's an amazing, a tremendous achievement.
Just real quick, I want to offer, part of what we try to do at Everyday Economics is to bring, some level of understanding to the things that we talk about that are related to the economy. And I think that this is an important piece. This is directly from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A job is defined as, or I should say, an employed person is defined as and I'm taking this directly from BLS.gov, person 16 years and over in the civilian non-institutional population who, during the reference week, A, did any work at all, at least 1 hour as paid employees, worked in their own business, profession, or on their own farm, or worked 15 hours or more as unpaid workers in an enterprise operated by a member of the family. So all you have to do, for that to count as a job, you would have had to work 1 hour.
Yeah, totally. That's fine. I appreciate that you bring up that definition, so people understand what's counted. But that definition just doesn't change over time, So
understood. Understood. Because I think that the reason I paused the program to say that is, that out there in the, you get these statistics and then you get these headlines. And if you look at the sort of the major networks and, the AP and anybody, New York Times, Washington Post, shocking job numbers coming in. This is an election year, right?
That's right.
So it's like, I think it's important to kind of like distill this for the benefit of people.
Totally. But for our audience, this is, I should say, look, if you've been paying attention to the Everyday Economics podcast, every January you get the same thing, right? Just like shocking jobs number, this up, this surprise. It's basically, look, there's a couple of adjustments that take place, technical adjustments that take place in January. And so you usually get this bump every January. In fact, I wrote about this. I said, hey, in December, in January, when we got the December jobs report, I said, hey, don't pay too much attention to this next jobs report. Okay. It's okay. It's nice to see things. At least you look at this number, you look at these numbers, and you're like, okay, well, jobs are being created. That's great. But we'll find out. We'll find out more. Look at the 3-month average. Let's get into March. And then we'll get a clearer picture of what's really going on in the labor market.
Yeah.
Right. But of course, numbers like these are going to justify the Fed's move to hold. Right. So like the market was anticipating rate cuts in March, But with numbers like these, the Fed has no pressure, has no reason to cut interest rates rapidly. It can wait. It can wait and see. And I think that's the right decision, to be totally honest with you. Wait and see. Take the wait and see approach for now. I have to caution, though, that, because rent growth has fallen substantially. You look at market rent growth, it's fallen substantially. It's now below pre-pandemic trend. Annual rent growth is now 2.7% for multifamily units, which is below the I think it was before the pandemic, something like 3.1 or 3.6%, something like that. I haven't checked the numbers lately, but that to me tells me, the American family, well, they're getting these, the labor market's still somewhat resilient, right? So they're keeping their jobs.
Yeah.
They're not paying as much. The wage growth is catching up to rents, right? Slowly but surely. But rent growth has slowed tremendously. And rents make up 42% of core inflation. So I don't think there's a ton of inflation left out there, right? Mm-hmm. And let me clarify again, as a lot of people say, well, you say not inflation, prices are higher. Yes, prices are higher. Inflation refers to price growth, not the price level. And so, yeah, price growth has slowed, right? Yeah. Consumer price growth has slowed. And so wages are able to catch up. We have 4.5% wage growth. So you look at every measure of inflation, they're closer to 3% now. So there's breathing room for the consumer. Inflation's cooling. So we're in good shape, man. We're in good shape heading into 2024. And that's a good thing. That's good news. That's not to say there are headwinds. There are headwinds in the distant future, and the Fed's going to have to cut interest rates at some point. They don't have to rush, but they're going to have to do it because there's not a ton of inflation left in the pipeline, and inflation expectations continue to fall. I think they're going to have to cut sometime this year because labor market is going to continue to ease. Inflation is continuing to ease towards the 2% target. And of course, inflation expectations are falling. If they don't cut, they could risk choking the U.S. economy, especially if we get a bigger slowdown in the second half of this year.
Yeah. I appreciate the thoughts as always for Orphe Divounguy. This has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other high quality podcasts at americastalking.com.